Hello, good morning to all of you. My name is Reggie. Uh, I will be dealing with a few sessions on project management as part of this course. The purpose of these sessions are to introduce you the concepts of the project, project formulation, and project implementation. Implementation. And we will be discussing some uh, project management framework that facilitate the all phases of the project management. I hope all of you are familiar with the project, and some of you are involved in the project formulation or design of project in your organization. Some of you are part of the implementing the project, and some of you are the beneficiaries of the project management in your organization. Project can be at different levels, and including individual level, organizational level, and government, national government, including local government level, and some projects are at the global level also. And for example, in the case of individual level, a student is involved in several projects as part of his learning. And, learning. For example, an engineering student undertake engineering projects as part of his studies. And a social science students undertake a research project as part of his studies. At individual level, we construct houses, new house, or repair the existing house. This is also an example of the project. We organize several events of social importance. For example, a marriage ceremony, a festival, for example. And, it's also an example of the project. When you look at the local government in your area, you can see a lot of projects implemented by the local government. For example, a housing project, a drinking water project, construction of the rural roads is another example, and the projects for the development of the micro and small enterprises, health projects, agricultural projects, and other social development projects also implemented by the local government. When you look at the national government, you can see a large projects, for example, a national highway project, a metro railway project, a thermal power plant, construction of a thermal power plant, a nuclear power plant. For example, an ISRO is implementing a satellite project at Chandrayaan, very very complex project. And some of the projects are very global in nature. For example, United Nations undertake various projects in the various fields, the fields of development, including health, poverty alleviation, the infrastructure development. The Nation Development Bank is implementing the projects. World Bank is implementing several projects. And several donor agencies, NGOs, are implementing several development projects. And these are all some of the examples of the projects, and people are involved in these projects. And what is essentially a project? We need to understand this aspect first. in all these examples, you can see some defining characteristics of the projects. I will try to explain some of these characteristics of the project. When you look at all these projects, an important aspect is that these involve investment in the all the projects involves investment, starting from the individual student project, construction of house, roads, buildings, railway, nuclear power plant, and other development projects all requires investment. So, and the second aspect is that all these projects are conceived for a specific purpose. For example, student projects aids his learning, and a thermal power plant provides electricity or address the problems of electricity. A national highway project facilitate the transportation and economic development. A health project is initiated to solve a specific problem in that area. In this way, several development projects are also conceived and implemented to address several social problems, including employment, poverty, infrastructure, development facilities. And the purpose is a very important aspect of the project. Project purpose, not only purpose, goals, projects as a goal, and then objectives of the project. And all the projects are conceived for a desired level of outcome, and from the present level to a desired level. We need to reach there, that desired level, and in that case we have the possibility of multiple projects. That is possible to do. And the third aspect of the project is that it involves a lot of jobs involved in the projects, and these jobs are very interrelated and which required a coordination of activities, and there is a precedence relationship between the project activities. Precedence relationship, there is a sequential sequence of activities, and one activity leads to other, and the completion of one activity requires the completion of the previous one. And this kind of precedential relationship is very important characteristics of the project. Another important characteristic of the project is that it is a one-time activity. Once the project is conceived and implemented, this is over. After completion, that will become part of the operations management. So projects are conceived and implemented for a time period, the specific time period. So in that case, there is a lifespan or a life cycle of the project. That's also very important. And the various projects goes through various life cycle, and the initial conceptualization to planning, development, implementation, and commissioning of the project, different cycles of the projects. The projects also requires resources. Then projects also requires a governance structure for implementing the various activities. Another important aspect of the project is that the time cost trade-off in a project, and the project needs to be implemented within a specified time, with the agreed upon the budget and agreed upon the quality. And these three elements are very important aspects of the projects and project management and keeping. If the project is not able to implement it in the specified time frame, it has implication on other the budget or the cost there to lead to cost escalations, and it will also affect the quality and the scope of the project also. And managing this trade-off is an important aspect in the project management. When we talk about the projects or project management, and we need to be familiar with all these defining characteristics of the project. And second aspect, the next thing that we need to understand is why we need to undertake a project. A project serves us to solve a problem. At an organization level, it is very clear. The organizations conceive the projects for solving an organizational problem. For example, organization might think of improving the capacity problem, addressing the capacity constraints, and improving the production. Production and project can be and second could be the organization can be thinking of new product development within an organization, and increasing the market share in organizations. And these are all the problem, and organizations strives for efficient and to be also be competitive, and for that purpose organizations undertakes various projects. And what is important to this project? Some projects are very simple. It can be implemented without much complexity, and an individual will be able to perform the activities of the projects. And on the other hand, some projects are very complex in nature, and it requires a detailed planning, the coordination, governance mechanisms, and acquisition of the information, the resources, and sequencing, scheduling, and implementation, and so on. And the multiple activities make projects, some projects very complex. And it is in this context that project management help us to manage this complexity in the project. And this is what we will be discussing throughout this course, managing the complexity of the projects. So we understood what is a project. And a project, it's a one-time activity, one-time investment activity, which is carried out with a specific purpose and solve, and which involves a complex relationship, and that need to be carried out in a coordinated way, and to realize the desired results in a project. We need to understand some different terminologies, related terminologies also, and some of these are projects, then programs, and portfolios. And sometimes we use these interchangeably, but these are in a way these are the different. When we look at the project or the characteristics of the project, we see that it is a smallest investment activity. That is what we call the project. On the other hand, a program may consist a set of clusters of projects, different projects together to constitute a program. Mm, Program, for example, poverty alleviation programs. Normally, we understood as within that programs, different projects are possible. And similarly, a portfolio consists of different programs and implemented in a coordinated way. And in that way, within the organizations, we can see the program portfolio of programs and project that is associated terminologies like portfolio management, the project management, and program management. And we need to be very clear on the talk about a little bit about the project design, and project formulation, and one important aspect of the project design is the identification, project identification and selection. And project is identified for solving a problem, and the clear need for the project needed to be established. And we need to be very clear why a project is needed, and what is the purpose of the goals, and what do we really try to achieve with that project, which means that the desired goals of the project. And the project is conceived from the transition from the current state of level to a desired level of activity, and that is what in that case there will be a possibilities of the several projects, and we need to prioritize these different projects. They prioritize these different projects, and these projects need to be implemented within a time frame, and we need to assess the resources required for implementation of the projects. And this is an important aspect of the project identification. As I mentioned that there is a project, different projects are possible, then there is a possibility of, then there is need for the project selection, and this project selection is carried out a detailed feasibility analysis that involving techno-economic, environmental and financial analysis, feasibility analysis. And a project need to be technically feasible. That's also very important consideration when we formulate a project. The various technical, we need to be very clear about the various technical parameters of the projects, how they are related, and the specificity of the project. And it is based on these aspects we understand the technical feasibility of the project. At the same time, the project needs to be socially acceptable. Socially acceptable in the sense the stakeholders. The project need to be accepted by its stakeholders, and in that the project formulation, we need to conduct a rigorous stakeholder analysis, understand their needs and priorities, and the proposed project need to be able to serve their concerns. And otherwise, if we are not ignoring this phase at the project formulation, that will lead to problems at the implementation stage. That is what we see in many of the projects. At the time of implementation, the stakeholders come into protest against the project, and that we see in many cases that will halt the activities of the project, social acceptance. And this social analysis is carried out in a very depth, very deep analysis, and the projects are subject to economic and financial analysis. The costs and returns of the projects need to be assessed, and cost benefits analysis need to be completed. At the same time, we need to complete the financial viability of the projects, the how much investment it requires, and from where the money come from, and from where do we acquire the resources for the for the projects. And these are all the subject of the financial analysis of the project. There is a detailed appraisal of the project, and finally there will be an environmental analysis, environmental impact analysis, which is very ecological and environmental analysis of the project, which is very important when the conceptualization of the projects. And the assumption is that the project should not hamper the environment, and there should not be any ecological adversity of implementation of the projects, and all these are all the very detailed analysis at the time of the project formulation stage. For example, we will look into some details of the need and how do we actually identify the need of the projects, and from where do the need come from. The need arises from the problem actually. One way to look into that need of the project is that look at what is the problem, and what do we need to actually address, solve the problem. The need will, this problem may require some investment or a thinking to solve these problems, and normally this need assessment need to be undertaken with the various stakeholders, both within the organization as well as the external to the organizations, and a SWOT assessment of the organization will also lead to the important problems within the organization and the needs. Once the need is identified, we need to identify the prioritized objectives of the projects, and this normally comes as a result of the detailed brainstorming within the organizations. Then there is different possibilities will arrive. This brainstorming results into different possibilities of projects, and we will not be able to do all the projects, and then that requires the screening of the projects based on the certain criteria that I mentioned, the techno-economic, financial, market, based on the techno-economic, financial and commercial analysis of the projects, and finally that will lead to a selection, a detailed project proposal or proposal development, detailed DPR of a project. And this is how the projects are conceived within any organizations, and some of you are involved in this process and a detailed project development. Some of you are involved in the detailed appraisal of the project, especially those who are working in the banking sector, and those who are involved in the financing of the project, and they are familiar with the appraisal, techno-economic, commercial and market analysis of the projects. And what we need to understand at this stage is that the basic elements of a project design, and this is very important at the time of the planning of the project. And the four basic elements of the project design are the goals. One aspect is the goals of the project, And second is that what is the purpose for which the project has been conceived. And third aspect is that what are the outputs of the projects. And the fourth activities is the what are the project activities. And these four elements are very clearly interrelated each other, and you can see the relationship between these four activities: outputs, the purpose, and the goals. And these elements need to be very clear, and these interrelations between these four elements need to be very clear at the time of the project formulation. And one starting point of the thinking is to start with the purpose, and always think about what is the purpose for which this project, a particular project, has been carried out. What is the goal of the project ultimately? Ultimate purpose, goal means ultimately what is the desired level of the change that we are bringing as part of the project. Or this could be the starting point for the of a project. What do you want to achieve in this project? And second is that and what we achieve the project, what do we want to achieve, that is the first things. And what we achieves the project outcomes, and what is the project outcomes, and what is the project inputs, how do we achieve this. Then you can find a hierarchical relationship between these two, between these four elements within which are logically connected each other. For example, inputs and resources that lead to outcomes. And if we realize the outcomes, we say that we are able to realize our purpose of the project. And when we realize the purpose of the project, that we will be able to achieve our goals. And these four elements are the design elements of a project, and we need to keep in mind that. And another important aspect at the time of design of the project is the defining and aligning of the objectives. Objectives need to be very clear, and purpose also need to be very clear. And where do the objectives come from? That is, we need to understand them. And I have told you that project is conceived for solving a problem, and naturally the purpose emerges from understanding of that project problems and problems. And in order to formulate the objectives or come out with the project objectives, we need to really understand the problem, what the problem is, and how do we address that problems. And that a detailed problem analysis is required for formulating a project objectives. And otherwise we can think of start in this way: if you have a desired objectives, always start with that objectives. And if we do not have the objectives, and we need to develop the objectives. And how do we develop these objectives? The objectives normally come from the problem, and we need to undertake a detailed problem analysis. And these problems need to be converted into the objectives, and this is very important for the project. And you see the relation between these various elements in the project. You take any project, and you can see this goal of the project, ultimate goal of the project. And second is the purpose for which the project has been conceived, and what is the project outcomes, and what is the project output, and what are the project activities that we carry out, and what are the inputs and resources required for these project activities. And this understanding of these logical relationship is very important in the project design. And we need to develop indicators for the outcomes, then goals, output, then activities, and we need to, that is how we measure the each outcomes and output of the output, or the goal, indicators of the goals, and that will give a measurable and quantifiable indicators for the projects. And all these activities works based on certain assumptions. That is also very important in the thinking about the project. I will come out with the summarize the discussion of the project process in the organization that we discussed so far. We have seen several examples of the projects, and defining characteristics that we also discussed, and we also discussed the purpose for this projects and important elements, design elements of the projects, and that will help us to summarize, to understand what is a project really is. A project can be conceived as an input-output process, which is input-output, which is carried out, which the process are. This process is constrained by the several other elements with the time, cost, quality constraints, time and quality constraints, and the process are carried out through various mechanism in the sense that we need people, we need knowledge, we need information, and we need financial and other resources. We need tools and techniques for carrying out the projects, and the project can be conceptualized in this way: an input-output process which are constrained by the time, cost, quality considerations, and these activities are carried out through mechanisms of the people, resources, knowledge, informations, and with the help of the tools and techniques in the project. So now it is very easy to understand what is a project, and what is a project management. One thing is that to understand what is a project, we have done it, and next level is that then what is a project? How do we conceive the project management? Project management conceived, a simple representation of the project management could be the time, cost, quality trade-off in a project. Project management is all about managing these trade-off in a project. You see the time. A project need to be delivered. We have seen that project is a one-time activity which need to be carried out within a specified time frame. Project need to be delivered within that time. So managing the time is very, very critical for the project management. How do we do that? This is one important aspect of the project management, project time management. And the project involves the cost also, resource consumes cost, resources, and resource involve the cost, the budget, or the cost is present in the budget. And this project need to be implemented within that cost limit, acceptable cost limit. That is also very important aspect. How do we do that? This is an important aspect of the project management. Then there is a scope of the project. Every project has a boundary, is defined by its boundaries and the scope of the and we cannot deviate from that scope of that project. And most importantly, we need to deliver the project within accepted quality parameters to the customers. And then the quality management in the project is also very important activity, important project quality management is a very important activity. So in a nutshell, the project management is all about managing the time. Project management is all about managing the cost within the project. Project management is all about managing the scope of the project and deliver the project within accepted quality of the project. How do we do this? How do we achieve this? It's a very important aspect, and for that we find the interface between the other elements in the project management. We need human people within the project. Then human resource management is a very important aspect of the project. We need mobilize the resources required for the implementation of the activities. Then in that case, the contract and the procurement management becomes an important aspect of the project management. We need to manage we need to deal with a lot of information, and we need to involve several people, and we need to communicate with the other various stakeholders within the organization, and the communication and information management becomes very important within the project management. And finally, the risk management is also very critical in the project management. Risk assessment and risk planning and risk management is also. So project management can be conceived very simply in this way. Any complex projects can be understood in this way. The project management is all about managing the trade-off between these elements, the key elements in the project: time, cost, scope, quality, trade-off, we would say, and that will be achieved through the interface of the other key elements in the projects, including human resources, other functional activities like the contract, procurement management, communication, information management, and risk management within the project. When we look at the project, every project passes through different phases. In it is initial conceptualization to the terminations, and that we call these various phases as the project life cycle, project cycle, and all projects, big or small projects, passes through the, and this cycle involves the initial design or the design phase or conceptualization phase, the development phase, then execution phase, and the final stage is that communication phase. And if this is the various phases of the project management project, in that case, the project management can be understood as managing these different phases. How do we manage this? How do we design a project? Project formulation is become important. Design, concept development, project formulation, then project appraisal and selection is also part of the project management. How do we do that? Project selection, project appraisal, then selecting one project and considering that project for detailed implementation of the project. That also requires a detailed planning for implementation. And then we may need to prepare work breakdown structure. We need to identify the activities. We need to understand the time required for the activity, how much time is required for completing that activities. We may need to understand what are the sequential relationship between the various activities in the project, sequencing, or we call it the scheduling of the projects. And we may require to understand the president's relationship between the relationship. The various tools are used for that. For example, program evaluation and review technique or CPM methods are used for understand this relations management. We need to acquire resources. We need to engage with the stakeholders, various stakeholders. Project owner is one important stakeholder, and other stakeholders also including community, larger society, and we need to involve the suppliers. We need to involve the project financiers. All these activities become part of the project planning and executions. And project management deals with all these activities in a coordinated manner. And this is what we will deal with two or three very short, very specific inputs on that project management. That is what we will be discussing. And the final stage of the project need to be commissioned and terminated, and the accountability aspect is there. Then the people need to be disbanded or redeployed to other resources, and the project need to be carried out, handed over to the owner. And also we need to understand the learning from the project learning. That is also an important aspect of the managing the termination cycle. The project important learning from the projects. So this is what the project management is all about. We will be dealing with in detail in the various sessions out there. Then I will conclude this session with a brief description of what is the role of the project manager in the managing a project or managing the project cycle. And so what is the project manager is a person who is very thoroughly involved in the all activities of the projects in the planning, the various conceptualization to the planning, execution, and the termination phases. So the responsibilities of the project management is to establish the project objectives and the sources and the success criteria of the project. This is one important aspect. Identify the stakeholders and project requirement is another important aspect that the project manager needs to be responsible for. Then plan for integration of the interfaces and the relationship between the various project activities. I understand that the project involves a large number of jobs which needs to be split into various tasks, and these tasks need to be carried out in an interrelated way. This is normally this will be done by preparing the work breakdown structure, and project manager needed to do that. Identify the risk areas and develop the risk management, relate the project's contribution towards the overall organization, and develop an integrated work breakdown structure, scheduling of that structure. Then another important responsibility of the project manager is to assemble the resources. He is responsible for organizing the team, delegate the appropriate tasks, and ensure the protection and communication. And all these are the planning and project planning and development stages. And the responsibility with respect to the execution and termination stage, monitor and review the update of the project plan. Important role. Team building, then establish the team norms, team roles, the motivate and ensure the jobs are organized, then resolve conflicts, set priorities within, negotiate the trade-off within the organizations, and forecast then results. Identify the training requirement of the projects, program achievement, and finally the handing over the project and documentation of the project, and very detailed activities. And it is a very responsible job because some projects are very complex and involve a lot of resources, people, and governance mechanism is also very important, and accountability is also very important in the project management, and the ability of the project manager to deal with all these activities in the various phases of the project depends upon his understanding about the project and various project planning tools and techniques, the tools and techniques, and some of the tools and techniques of the project management that we will be discussing in the next sessions. Okay. Okay. And in these sessions that we try to understand what is a project, and we also discussed about what is the characteristics of the project and the purpose of the project, and the design elements of the project, then project management, how do we conceptualize the project management, and we also discussed about the roles and responsibilities of the project management, and we are concluding this session, and we will be sharing the ready materials, and we will also be conducting the online chat sessions to help you understand these concepts, and clearing some of the doubts as well. And thank you for listening.